Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 21st June 2025 brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be covering the 7 set of current affairs issues which have featured in today's newspaper, and the handout of this very discussion is available in the description below for your future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, firstly we'll try to analyze India's progress, particularly with respect to the electronic vehicle sector. Moving on to the second topic, herein we'll try to understand the concept of communalism, the causes of it, and what all steps the government need to take in order to restore the social fabric when it comes to Indian society. Moving on to the simplified section, herein we'll be covering the 5 set of current affairs topics in the most simple manner possible, and we'll also be doing the necessary value addition which would be relevant for your prelims examination. So let's begin the discussion. So, beginning with the first topic, which is related to electric vehicle sector in India. This particular topic we can relate with GS paper 3, basically the achievements of Indians in science and technology. What is the context? So, recently a New York based think tank named Rodian Group has come up with its report, wherein it has highlighted that India would become the 4th largest electric car manufacturer after China, Europe and US. And the report has further pointed out that if we want to compete with China, we need to reduce the cost of manufacturing the electric car in India. In this respect, the first thing that we'll be looking into that what is electric vehicles? Electric vehicles basically derive the powers from rechargeable batteries. So they are different from traditional internal combustion engine, which basically derives the power by burning the diesel or gasoline. We have 3 different variants of electric vehicle. First is battery electric vehicles, which is fully based on rechargeable batteries. So the car would be deriving the power from rechargeable batteries. Okay, we would not be relying on gasoline or diesel. Example is Tesla, Nissan Leaf, etc. Then we have hybrid electric vehicles. In that we have 2 versions. One is plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, examples are Toyota Prius, and another one is simple hybrid electric vehicles. What is the difference between the two? When I say hybrid electric vehicles, herein we would not be completely relying on rechargeable batteries. So we'll be having battery also, and we'll be having an internal combustion engine which would be deriving the power by burning the gasoline. Okay, when I talk about plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, herein I can charge this battery externally also. But when I talk about simply hybrid electric vehicle, herein I cannot charge the battery externally. The battery would be charged through this gasoline combustion or through regenerative braking. Okay, example is Honda Insight. Now when I talk about the EV sector in India, it is quite nascent, as you can look into the statistics provided by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. According to this particular entity, when you look at the sales when it comes to EV segment, it comprises less than 1% share of the total vehicle sales in India. But there is one good news also. Over a period of time, we are witnessing a shift in consumers' preferences. Consumers in India, they are becoming aware with regard to the environmental benefits of this EV segment. And that is the reason in the recent time, at one end, we are witnessing a reduction in the sales when it comes to the cars which are based on internal combustion engine. On the other hand, we are witnessing an increase in sales of the EV segment, except this 2-wheelers vehicle segment when it comes to electric vehicle segment. In passenger vehicles, 3-wheelers, commercial vehicles, we have witnessed a increase, as you can see the plus sign here, when it comes to electric vehicles. Now, the another aspect that we need to understand that why the government is emphasizing upon this electric vehicle sector. First and foremost, from the point of view of sustainability principle. Because if you go by the report of Niti Aayog, road transportation is the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emission sector when it comes to India. And since 1990s, the contribution of this particular sector to greenhouse gases as a percentage of India's energy related emissions, it has increased 3 times. And currently this sector contributes 14% of India's energy related emissions. And everybody is aware of this thing that by 2050, we are going to witness doubling of the urban population. So just imagine the amount of greenhouse gas emission this particular sector alone is going to contribute. This is the major reason why the government is focusing upon this particular sector. Then another prominent reason is to reduce the import dependency. Here I am basically talking about the crude oil. Now, when it comes to the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, according to this particular entity, transport sector accounts for 18% of total energy consumption in India. If you convert it in terms of crude oil requirement, it would turn out to be 94 million tons of oil equivalent energy. And if we go by this current rate only, by 2030, we would be needing 200 million tons of oil equivalent energy requirement. Imagine the import bill of India. Because when it comes to crude oil, we are majorly import dependent. And if the requirement of this road transportation sector is itself roughly around 200 million tons, we would be having a very high current account deficit. Okay, so in order to reduce our import dependence when it comes to crude oil, and in order to protect the Indian economy from the volatility in the international prices of crude oil, the government is giving a push to e-mobility. Then this sector also have huge export potential also. If you talk about automobile sector in general, recently India surpassed Japan to become the third largest auto market globally. And as this report currently that we are discussing, Rhodium Group, has also pointed out that by 2030, India would become the fourth largest electric car manufacturer globally. Okay, so this sector has high export potential as well. And then the sector has huge potential to create a lot of jobs also. This was highlighted by Economic Survey of 2023 that this sector could create roughly 5 crore jobs by 2030. Now, although the government is giving a push to this particular sector, but why even today there is low adoption of this EV segment? First and foremost reason is the high cost of electric vehicles. If you just compare the cost of a car which is deriving the power from burning the gasoline or the diesel, okay, compare the Nexon group, Tata Nexon, where it is based on internal combustion engine, the price starts from 8 lakh. But as the moment you move on to the EV segment, the price starts from 14 lakh. And when it comes to the Indian consumers, we are very price sensitive. That is the reason if a company X provides us less quantity of a particular product, but at the same price, we are not worried about that. We continue to buy that product. Let me know in the comment section what kind of inflation am I talking about. Then another issue is limited charging infrastructure. If you go by the Ministry of Power report, we roughly have more than 25,000 power charging stations across India. And this is the report till December 2024. And these power charging stations are also there mainly in the urban area, not in the rural areas and in the mega cities only. This is the reason when it comes to the EV car users, they suffer from range anxiety. What is this range anxiety? They are worried that given the battery that is fully charged or partially charged, will they be able to cover the distance which they have decided to cover, and within this distance will they be able to find a power charging station or not, or they would run out of power totally. This is one of the major reasons why the Indian consumers are not incentivized to buy more EV vehicles, okay? Because when it comes to the internal combustion engines based vehicles, we can easily find the petrol pumps, okay, in any nook and corner of India. But when it comes to the electric vehicles power charging station, they are mainly concentrated in the mega cities, okay. This is one of the major issue. Then there are issues with local manufacturing of the batteries also. When it comes to EV segment, basically we need lithium-ion batteries, and in this case we are majorly dependent upon China. So if you go by this year economic survey, it points out that India imports roughly 75% of the lithium-ion batteries from China. And in future, if China tries to weaponize this particular thing, weaponize the trade, then we would be witnessing supply chain disruptions when it comes to EV segment. And when we are import dependent, this is another reason why we have higher cost of manufacturing the EV related segments which are there, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, etc. Now, another issue with this EV vehicles is their grid dependence and the emission. When it comes to EV vehicles, they do not produce greenhouse gas emission, but we are charging the batteries of EV vehicles, and these charging is basically done from where? The energy generated by coal. If you go by this particular data point which I have taken from Niti Aayog website, even today more than 40% of our total energy is generated from coal. So what is the point of giving a push to EV sector when ultimately we are, generating greenhouse gas emission by producing the energy through coal or thermal power plant? It's just like the UPSC preparation. If you start focusing upon prelims, mains get impacted. If you start focusing upon mains, prelims get impacted. Okay, so ultimately we would be getting the proper results only when we make sure that this energy is also coming from renewable energy sources, okay, not from coal powered thermal power plants. And when it comes to UPSC preparation, until unless you don't focus upon both the things, you will come back to pavilion. And that is what is happening with this EV sector. Because we are charging the batteries through the energy which is generated from coal sector, we ultimately are making the greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to focus upon both things, giving a push to electric vehicles also, but at the same time making sure that the energy is also generated from renewable energy sources. Then another issue with this EV segment is huge e-waste which is generated. And if you go by the Global E-Waste Monitor 2024, India is the third largest e-waste generator after China and USA. And when it comes to India, the problematic thing is 90% of the e-waste is managed in unorganized sector or informal sector, wherein it is basically the women and the children who are working. And because of this thing, they are exposed to toxic gases. And that is the reason we are witnessing a reduction in their lifespan also. So due to this unscientific management of e-waste, we are bearing environmental cost, we are bearing social cost as well. So these are the major issues that we are witnessing with regard to EV sector. Now let's just look into what all steps the government has taken to give a boost to e-mobility. First and foremost, the FAME scheme, okay, under which the government is incentivizing faster adoption and manufacturing of e-vehicle segment, okay, by putting in place adequate public charging infrastructure. Then we have the PLI scheme also for this particular segment. In this segment, the government is trying to give a boost to domestic manufacturing of the electric vehicles. But under this, a company would be getting the financial benefits for incremental sales only when it ensures that 50% of the value addition is done domestically. Then we have PM E-Drive scheme, wherein the government is again putting in place adequate public charging infrastructure with regard to electric vehicles, and it is also giving a push for adoption of e-buses, e-trucks, e-ambulances, and it is also focusing upon upgrading the vehicle testing agencies as well. Then we have PM E-Bus Seva Payment Security Mechanism Scheme 2024, wherein the government is giving a push to e-buses deployment, okay, basically bringing the e-vehicle thing in the public transportation sector only. And lastly, we have scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electric passenger cars in India, which was introduced in 2024. So under this, if a company wants to get the financial incentives from the government, this company needs to make sure that it brings the investment more than 4,150 crore. And by the end of the third year, this company needs to make sure that 25% of the domestic value addition is done. And by the end of fifth year, 50% of value addition should be done domestically. Okay, only then this company would become eligible to get the financial benefits. What more needs to be done in order to give a push to this particular sector? So we can come up with battery lease to own program. What do I mean by this? Let's suppose I want to buy a electric car. So instead of buying that car with the battery itself, I'll just buy the body of that car and I'll get the battery on lease. So I'll enter into a lease agreement, let's suppose for 5 years. And after this 5 years, I can either buy this battery or I can again return it to the leasing agency. Why we are talking about battery lease to own program? Because over a period of time, this segment would witness transformation. Okay, so better quality of batteries might come up. That is the reason, in order to reduce the upfront cost of buying this electric vehicle, we can come up with battery lease to own program. Okay, I just need to buy this thing initially. So if I just buy this car body, it would be costing me less. And as and when there would be better, batteries coming up, so I can get the advanced battery on lease. Then we need to increase the charging public charging infrastructure. According to Confederation of Indian Industries, India would be needing over 1.3 million charging infrastructure by 2030. And roughly, right now we have roughly what? More than 25,000 only. So imagine the distance that we need to travel. Only then the customers or consumers in India would be incentivized to buy the electric vehicles. Then in order to give a push to electric vehicles in the rural areas also, because currently we discussed what? That charging stations are majorly concentrated in mega cities. So in order to give a push to the electric vehicle thing in rural areas also, what we can do, we can come up with EV Rural Entrepreneurs Program, wherein the government can provide some sort of, financial support to the people or entrepreneurs in rural area, and with the help of that micro loan, that particular entrepreneur can build up a charging infrastructure in the rural areas. Okay, so we can come up with a mobile app also through which the people can book a slot, okay, when it comes to the charging infrastructure in the rural areas. So this would give a boost to rural economies also, and the people would be further incentivized to buy the electric vehicles. Then we can come up with highway battery swap corridors. What do I mean by this? This could go a long way in addressing the range anxiety. So we can collaborate with the hotels which are there along the highways, and they can keep these rechargeable batteries, and we can come up with a mobile app also. So I can do an advanced booking, okay, that I need to swap my battery, and I can get the battery as soon I reach that highway. Okay, so this would go a long way in addressing the range anxiety when it comes to EV car owners. And lastly, in order to address this issue of e-waste, what we can do, we can come up with second life battery bazaar, wherein let's suppose if I want to buy a advanced battery, okay, now technological advancement has happened and I want to buy a advanced battery. So what I'll do, I'll sell my second hand battery which is there, and this could be bought by the companies for extracting the useful materials which is there, like nickel, cobalt, lithium, etc., which could be used for further manufacturing. So this would give a boost to circular economy. And the second life battery could also be used for, those operations which require less power. For example, e-rickshaws, for example, powering the solar panels, etc. Ultimately, this would enable us to reduce the amount of e-waste which would be generated, and it would also enable us to go with the idea of circular economy. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you. So do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, the next topic is related to communalism in India. This you can associate with GS paper 1. Therein directly we have the topic communalism. Why are we discussing this social issue of communalism? Because recently we are witnessing communal tensions in the Dhubri region of Assam. Why? Because certain cattle body parts were allegedly found at Hanuman temple. In this respect, what we need to understand is, what is this whole idea of communalism? So according to Rajni Kothari, this basically refers to the tendency of religious communities to view themselves as distinct and antagonistic entities. What do I mean by this? If certain individuals, X, Y, Z, they belong to one community, and other set of individual A, B, C, they belong to another community. If you go by the idea of communalism, what it implies is, these group of people would be having common secular interest. Secular interest as in political, economic and social interest. And in the extreme version of communalism, this group, okay, XYZ group, would start considering that their secular interest is in conflict with the secular interest of the another religious community. Okay, when we witness this idea of us versus them, that is the time when we witness communal tensions in India. So communalism has different degrees. First is mildest, okay, wherein the XYZ, since they belong to one religion, they think that they have common secular interest. Moderate communalism is when they think that the another religious group, their secular interest is different or distinct from the secular interest of this religion. And the extreme communalism is something when we witness when a particular religious community go with zero-sum game. What is zero-sum game? This is a term that we usually use in economics, wherein if somebody is gaining, the other person has to lose. this is a scenario when it comes to communalism, is when this religious community start thinking that their religious, their secular interests are completely in conflict with the secular interest of the another religious community. Okay, so these are the 3 different degrees of communalism. Now, let's just look into different types of communalism. The 6-fold classification has been provided by the sociologist T.K. Oman. First is assimilationist, wherein the minority religious group are assimilated into the dominant religious group, traditions, customs, etc. For example, Hindu Code Bill, which is applied to minority religious segment also, that is Sikhs, Jain and Buddhist. Then we have welfareist, wherein a particular religious community start demanding some socio-economic benefits from the government. Then we have retreatist, wherein a particular religious community debars its member from involving in active party politics. Like example, we have Bahaism religion, which discourages the people who follow this religion from involving in active party politics. Then we have retaliatory communalism, wherein we witness this extreme communalism. Okay, one group start considering that their secular interest is completely in conflict with the secular interest of another community. This is what something we witnessed in case of Godhra riots. Then separatist, wherein a particular religious community start demanding a separate identity. They don't demand secession from the union, they demand a separate identity and separation from the larger state. Okay, example could be demand for Gorkha land and Greater Nagaland. Then we have secessionist type of communalism, wherein the religious communities start demanding secession from the union, okay, creation of another nation altogether. Example could be Khalistan movement for creation of a separate Sikh state. Let's just explore what are the causes of communalism. First and foremost are the historical reasons. The British carrot and stick policy, divide and rule policy, especially with respect to Hindu and Muslims, because of which we have to witness the partition. Okay, so the carrot and stick policy of the Britishers actually sowed the seed of discord when it comes to Hindu and Muslim community, and this distrust got amplified because of the revivalist movement. Okay, which further highlighted that yes, the secular interest of one religious community is different from the secular interest of another religious community, and at times it is in conflict with the other religious community. Okay, revivalist movement like your Wahhabi movement, Arya Samaj movement, etc. Then we have the political factor, basically because of the vote bank politics. Politicians time and again, exploit these communal lines to secure their vote bank politics. At times, this Babri Masjid issues have been used to appease the voter. And why the politicians are able to make this hate speech? Because currently we have not defined what hate speech actually mean, and we do not take any strict action against such politicians for spreading such hate speech. Then there are economic factors also. If you look at the Muzaffarnagar riots of UP, which occurred in 2013, majority of the people were unemployed youth. Why? Because these unemployed people become more vulnerable to extremist ideology. And this is what Sachar Committee report has also pointed out, that if you look at the minority sector, they are usually educationally and economically backward, especially with respect to Muslims. And that is the reason they become more vulnerable to extremist or, this extremist ideology as well as communal propaganda as well. Then there are social factors also. For example, this Ghar Wapsi movement, reconversion into Hinduism, and mob lynching because of beef consumption, that also creates a lot of communal tensions at time. And because of fear of demographic change also, fear of demographic change means what? That if our ex-religious community is living in a particular region, because of huge influx of another religious community, let's suppose Y, this ex-community is fearful that we might be reduced to a minority, okay? And that is why we witnessed the riots in the state of Assam in 2012, and it was between Bodos and Muslims. It was on account of this fear of demographic change only. Then media also has important role to play here. Because of social media, okay, wherein we have anonymity, I can maintain 5-6 accounts. And with those 5-6 accounts, it is becoming easier for me to spread misinformation, false news, the communal propaganda easily, okay? Because there is issue in tracing that who was the original, creator of this particular content. Then, when you talk about the Delhi riots, the media houses were criticized for their biased reporting. Because of their biased reporting, the communal tensions got further amplified. And the media houses basically do this just to get the TRPs high. And this actually is not in alignment with the professional ethics when it comes to media. Now, how does this communal tensions actually impact Indian society as well as the economy? So, whenever we have communal tension, there is deterioration in law and order. If you go by the National Crime Record Bureau report, in 2021, we witnessed 378 cases of communal riots in India. Then during communal riots or during communal tension, we witness huge or rampant violation of human rights. The famous case which we all are aware of is Bilkis Banu gang rape case, wherein 20 to 30 Muslim men actually gang raped Bilkis Banu and the other female members of her family. This occurred during the Gujarat riots. And these human rights violation actually goes against Article 121 of the Indian Constitution that talks about right to dignified life. Then, whenever there are social tensions, after social tension, communal tension, a particular religious community is not in a state that it can trust the another religious community. And that is the reason, if you go by the survey which was conducted by the Pew Research Center in 2023, what we found out that only 42% of the Indians can trust the people who belong to different religious community. Okay, and at time, because of this disrupted social fabric, we witness mass exodus, displacement, etc. And that is what something that we witness in the case of Kashmiri Pandits. It is mainly because of the seeds of distrust. Then, because of this communal riots and tensions, we witness economic losses also. According to Global Peace Index report of 2022, the communal riots actually cost us roughly 6% of the GDP. Then, when India witnessed such type of communal tensions, it also tarnishes our image at the international level. When it comes to US Commission on International Religious Freedom, it has designated India as a country of particular concern. Why? Because we came up with Citizenship Amendment Act, we came up with NRC, which severely impacts the religious freedom when it comes to the Muslim community. Okay, they might not be having the relevant document to prove that they are Indian citizens. Okay. Now, in this backdrop, what needs to be done? How we can restore the distorted social fabric? So, first and foremost, we need to strengthen the justice system. We need to put in place fast-track court, which would be particularly looking into the cases related to communal rights, as we did in the Gujarat riots case. And when it comes to the politicians, in that respect, the Election Commission of India needs to ensure strict implementation of Model Code of Conduct in order to make sure that these politicians are not able to resort to hate speech in order to appease the voters, and they can divide the voters on religious lines. Then we need to enhance the minority representation when it comes to different levels of administration. We can learn from the example of Kerala, wherein it has integrated minority communities, especially in the police force. Now, when the minorities actually become a part of the administration, they also, shed this particular concern that the state is not empathetic towards their needs and concerns. Okay, they know that now their voice would also be heard because they are also part of the administration. Then we need to address the legislative loophole. Previously, we tried to introduce a particular bill which would be dealing with the communal rights related issue, but this bill could not be passed at the floor of the House. So we need to address this legislative gap in order to ensure the accountability of the district administration also with respect to the communal tensions. And we can also, put in place a designated authority which would be looking into the issue of communal tensions and which would take the necessary steps in order to restore the social fabric. Then we need to encourage the interfaith dialogue that would enable the different communities to develop mutual respect for the other religious community. Okay, like we can learn from Kenya, US, and we also have a good example in case of Kashmir also. This needs to be replicated in other states also. This would go a long way in developing mutual respect for other religion, okay, or for the diversity. Then we need to promote value-based education right from the childhood. We should make the child learn the values of tolerance, non-violence, secularism, respect for the diversity, so that in future this younger generation do not become vulnerable to the communal propaganda or the extremist ideologies. And lastly, you can quote the recommendation given by the second ARC also, that we can put in place district peace committees like what we have done in the state of Maharashtra, which basically involve the community leaders for resolving the local conflict, because community religious leaders, their words are actually valued by the community. Okay, so they can do their necessary work in order to restoring the social fabric. And then it also talked about putting in place mohalla committees, which would be identifying the local problems which might turn into a communal tension. So this mohalla committee would be taking proactive measures and it would prevent the local problems from turning into communal tensions. Okay, so all these things you can quote your answers. I have framed a practice question for you. Do practice this question. Let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the simplified section. Now, beginning with the simplified section, recently the Monetary Policy Committee had its meeting, and in that meeting, the MPC has decided to reduce the repo rate. This particular topic we can associate with prelims, basically the economy part. So as the inflation figures are coming down, it has reduced by about 3% between October 2024 and April 2025, and it is further anticipated that it would be coming down further. Keeping this declining trend when it comes to inflation in mind, recently the Monetary Policy Committee has decided to reduce the repo rate by a majority of 5:1. So repo rate has been reduced by 50 basic points and currently it is 5.5%. And the Monetary Policy Committee has also changed its stance from accommodative to neutral. Now, the first thing that we need to understand with respect to this particular issue is, what is repo rate? Repo, why this name is there? Because it basically talks about repurchase option. So if a commercial bank wants short-term liquidity support from RBI, basically liquidity support for 7 days, 14 days, then what it needs to do, it can go to RBI and it needs to pledge the government securities as collateral. But you need to keep in mind that here the commercial bank cannot pledge the SLR quota government securities in order to get the liquidity support under repo rate. Do let me know in the comment section that under which quantitative tool the commercial bank is allowed to pledge even the SLR quota government securities to get the liquidity support from RBI. Now, coming back to repo rate, now after 7 days, 14 days, when this bank would be returning the money to RBI, then the RBI would be again giving the government securities back to this commercial bank. Okay, since the bank and the RBI enter into a repurchase agreement that, okay, once I return the liquidity that you have given plus the interest rate, obviously, because bank do not do anything for free. So once I'll be returning the money along with the interest rate, I would be getting this collateral back. Okay, this is what is repo rate. Now let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to Monetary Policy Committee as well, because previously UPSC has asked a question with respect to this committee. So when it comes to India, we introduced this flexible inflation targeting framework in 2016. Okay, so we amended the RBI Act of 1934 based upon the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee. So who is going to fix the inflation targets? It is the central government in consultation with the RBI, and these targets would be fixed once in 5 years. Currently it is 2% to 6%. And when I say inflation level, which inflation I am talking about? Am I talking about WPI? No, I am talking about CPI. And in CPI also I am talking about CPI combined, basically urban plus rural. Okay. Then when it comes to this particular committee, it has in total 6 members, 3 are from the RBI, 3 are appointed by the government, and these government appointed members, they are not eligible for reappointment. When it comes to members from the RBI, so you have your RBI governor, which basically presides the meeting of MPC, and you have the deputy governor of RBI and one officer of RBI. Here the decisions are based on majority, like what we saw right now. In today's MPC meeting, the decision was taken by a majority of 5:1. And in case of a tie of vote, the RBI governor gets the casting vote. And in order to carry out a meeting of MPC, we need at least 4 members. This MPC has to meet at least 4 times in a year, although it can meet after 2-3 months also, but according to the act, it is supposed to meet at least 4 times in a year. It can meet for more times as well, okay, based on the economic condition. And one more thing that you need to keep in mind is, if the MPC fails to keep the inflation within this range, if the inflation is higher than 6% or if the inflation is less than 2%, and this situation is for 3 consecutive quarters, that means for 9 consecutive months, if this is the scenario, then in that respect, MPC has to give a detailed report to the central government wherein it would be explaining the reasons for the same and the action, the course of action which the MPC would be taking in order to bring the inflation level again back in this particular range. And what is the prominent function of this particular committee? To basically fix the repo rate. Now, let's just understand different monetary policy stances. First is accommodative stance. Accommodative stance, just remember it, that it is trying to accommodate what? Accommodate economic growth. Okay, now in order to give a boost to economic growth, what we need? We need higher aggregate demand. And when you and me would be demanding more loans from the bank, when the interest rate would be lower. That means, if the RBI wants the commercial banks to give loans to you and me at a lower interest rate, what RBI needs to do? RBI needs to reduce the repo rate, what the RBI has done right now. When repo rate would reduce, the banks can get the liquidity support from RBI at a lower interest rate. And then the banks would further be incentivized to give loan to you and me at a lower rate of interest. And this would give a boost to aggregate demand, and this would further give a boost to economic growth. So here, interest rate hike is completely ruled out. Then we have the neutral stance. This is the current stance of MPC, wherein the interest rate could either go up also, or it could either be reduced also. Okay, so you can go any side. It is up to the MPC. Then we have hawkish stance. So it is completely in contrast with what we have in accommodative stance. Here in hawkish stance, the priority is to keep the inflation in check. And how do you bring the inflation in check? By reducing the aggregate demand. How do you reduce the aggregate demand? By preventing the people from getting more and more loans. And how do you do that? By basically increasing the interest rate. Because when the loans would become costlier, only then you and me would be demanding less. So when the interest rate increases, I would prefer to buy the iPhone at a later date. I am not some person who is ready to sell his or her kidney to buy an iPhone. Okay, I would wait for the interest rate to come down, only then I'll prefer to buy the new iPhone series which is there in the market. Okay, so this is how the RBI basically brings the inflation in check. So for this, what RBI has to do? RBI would be increasing the repo rate. Okay, so these are the different monetary policy stance that we need to know. There's a PYQ with respect to the Monetary Policy Committee, as I told you. We have already discussed this committee. I hope you will be able to let us know the answer to this particular PYQ in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, recently, an article has appeared with regard to quantum computing. This particular topic you can associate with science section of prelims. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand how this quantum computing thing is different from our regular computers. So, quantum computing is basically based on quantum physics. Okay, when you talk about the regular computers, they actually produce the information in bits, which can either be 0 or 1. But when I talk about quantum computing, they use qubits, which can be 0 and 1 at the same time. This quality of qubits or the quantum computing is basically referred to be as superposition. And it is because of this quality of qubits we are able to do secured communication with the help of quantum computing. And if anyone tries to, interfere with that secured communication, we get to know. Now, let's just note down certain pointers with regard to quantum computing mission, which has been, launched by the government in 2023 to give a boost to quantum computing technologies when it comes to India. This program would be running from 2023 till 2031, and this much amount has been allocated for this particular mission. What are the objectives? So under this, we are, planning to establish a secure high bandwidth communication infrastructure spanning 2000 kilometers. That means till this much distance, we should be able to do secure quantum communication, which nobody is able to decrypt. If somebody is trying to interfere with that secure information, we should be able to know that. Then we are planning to enhance the quantum computing power also, okay, which would be able to process 1000 qubits. Then we are planning to advance the development of highly sensitive magnetometers for precision measurement and reliable atomic clocks. What are atomic clocks? Which basically measure the time based on the vibration of a particular atom. Then the mission also focus upon developing advanced quantum material designs also. Now, this particular mission is basically having 4 thematic hubs. Okay, quantum computing is basically looked into by, it is led by the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. When you talk about quantum communication, herein it is to be led by the Indian Institute of Technology of Madras in association with the Center for Development of Telematics, which is situated in Delhi. Then when you talk about the quantum sensing and meteorology, this is to be spearheaded by the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. And when you talk about the quantum material and devices, it is to be looked into or led by the IIT Delhi. Now, what the article which has been appeared in today's newspaper points out, that recently we had made a great advancement in the domain of quantum computing. Researchers from IIT Delhi and DRDO has successfully demonstrated a quantum key distribution scheme wherein 2 people, they are situated roughly 1 kilometer apart. They are able to do secured communication with the help of quantum technology. And if anyone tries to intercept this message, we will get to know that okay, somebody has tried to interfere with the secured communication. This thing we need to scale so that we are able to do secured communication with the help of satellites which are situated far away. Okay, without this fear that the secured communication would be compromised by the third party. But the article has also pointed out some issues which we are witnessing with regard to this national quantum mission. Now, when it comes to this particular mission, the scientists have pointed out that the financial, disbursement is not being done on the time. Okay, there is absence of single window clearances and documentation requirements have increased the duration of the projects. And there is high import dependency also when it comes to hardware component, when it comes to software also. Okay, like cryostats and sensors, for this we are dependent upon imports. And when it comes to the quantum software stacks also, they are currently being managed by the multinational companies. So we have higher import dependency also. We came up with this mission basically to, move in the direction of Atmanirbharta also when it comes to quantum technology, but that is not seen to be happen. And then because of this lack of timely access to resource under this particular mission, the researchers are basically forced to accept short-term contracts and rent the equipments. And the article further points out that the financial outlay which the government has done under this national quantum mission is quite low if you compare the allocation done by the US as well as China government. Okay, when it comes to US, the funding given by the US government for quantum technology is 5 times higher, like what we are witnessing in case of India with respect to this national quantum mission. And when it comes to China, it is 20 times higher than what the government has allocated for this particular mission. So the article is pointing out that if we want to make the advancement in the domain of quantum technology, the government needs to meet what is being provided by the government of US as well as China. Okay, and administrative reforms are needed. Okay, we are not able to effectively use this much amount of money which has been allocated by the government because of the administrative issues. So that needs to be addressed first, and then over a period of time, the government needs to enhance the financial allocation for this quantum computing technology. With this, let's move on to the next question. Now, in order to get the feedback of the citizens, Ministry of Rural Development has come up with the idea of QR codes with respect to Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana roads. This particular topic you can associate with the government schemes. Now, the Ministry of Rural Development has asked the states to attach the QR codes on all maintenance information display boards for roads which are built under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Okay. Let's note down certain pointers with regard to this particular scheme only. So, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, the first phase was started in 2000. Second phase was launched in 2013. And when I talked about the first phase, herein it was fully funded by the government, central government only. Okay. Then it had a are component for the left-wing extremism affected areas also. So we enhance the rural connectivity there also, and this left-wing affected areas therein the rural connectivity was enhanced in 2016. Then third phase was launched in 2019 and the fourth phase was launched last year only, wherein the government is focusing upon providing what? All-weather road connectivity to the unconnected rural areas, okay, which have a population size of greater than 500. So as I told you, initially when this scheme was started, it was fully funded by the central government only. It was only in 2015 and 16 that the funding pattern was changed. Okay, so currently it is 60-40 when it comes to the plain states and other states. When it comes to northeastern states and Himalayan states, it is 90:10. So 90% is to be contributed by the central government, 10 would be provided by the state government when it comes to northeastern and Himalayan states. Now let's just note about this QR code which the government has introduced. So the National Rural Infrastructure Development Agency, which actually works under the Ministry of Rural Development, this is the agency which has come up with this idea of QR code. So this agency basically provides the technical support when it comes to implementation of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana scheme as well. So why we are coming up with this QR code? In order to get the citizens' feedbacks with regard to the maintenance of roads which have been created under this particular Yojana. So if you go by this particular Yojana, the roads have to be maintained by the contractor which has actually built the road. Once the road is built, the contractor is supposed to maintain the road for 5 years after the construction has been done. Okay, so once the contractor completes the road, it would be submitting all the necessary documentation on this EMARC, electronic maintenance of rural roads. Okay, then on, the field engineering staff would be doing the routine inspection with regard to the quality of roads which are being created under the scheme. Herein the performance is to be evaluated based on 12 parameters, and this National Rural Infrastructure Development Agency would be deploying national level monitors to check the quality of roads. Okay, when it comes to the roads which are created under this Yojana, time and again it has been pointed out that the roads are of substandard quality. That is the reason the government has come up with this idea of QR code. Now a QR code would be generated for each road. Okay, when you go to the maintenance and information display board on that road, okay, on this EMARC portal, if you go to the maintenance information display icon, you can get this QR code. So the citizens can scan this QR code and they can register their feedback with regard to the maintenance and the quality of roads in English language also and in local language also. Okay, previously we didn't had any such mechanism to get the citizens feedback with regard to this particular Yojana. This particular step would go a long way in enhancing the citizens' participation also when it comes to effective implementation of this Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Now let's just note down certain pointers with regard to this particular Yojana. We have already discussed the 4 phases of the scheme. So first phase, as we discussed, was started in 2000 and initially it was fully funded by the government. It was only in 15-16 that we changed the funding pattern. The nodal ministry is Ministry of Rural Development. Eligibility, if when you talk about the plain areas, if the population is higher than 500, in hilly areas if the population is higher than 250, then in that case the roads, all weather connectivity roads would be developed in the hilly as well as plain areas. Funding pattern we have already discussed. And what is the significance of enhancing the road connectivity, especially when it comes to rural areas? It would give a boost to the rural economy. The people would be able to access the education and healthcare facilities effectively, and the trained personals when it comes to in the sector of education, when it comes to health also, they would also be incentivized to come and provide their services in the rural areas. Because of all weather road connectivity connecting the rural areas with the urban areas, the farmers would be able to sell their agriculture produce at a higher rate also. So there would be high mobility also, and the rural people would be able to enhance their income like this. Okay, so this is the significance of this particular Yojana. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now recently, the International Atomic Energy Agency has warned of nuclear disaster if the Israel plans to attack the Iran's nuclear power plant. This particular topic you can associate with the international organization section when it comes to prelims. Now, recently we are all aware of the tensions which are going on in the West Asian region, basically between the Israel and Iran. So in this respect, the International Atomic Energy Agency Director has warned that if Israel basically attacks the Bushehr civil nuclear power plant in the state of Iran, this could lead to nuclear catastrophe when it comes to the countries which are situated near it. Okay, so this is basically West Asia's first nuclear civil reactor, and it contains thousands of kilograms of nuclear material. So if Israel basically attacks this nuclear power plant of Iran, this would be a nuclear catastrophe because a lot of radioactive material would be released in the nearby regions. So the consequences would be also high if Israel basically tends to stop the electricity supply to this Bushehr nuclear power plant, because in that case it would trigger a meltdown of the radioactive materials which is there. Okay, so in worst case scenario, if the attack actually happens, then the International Atomic Energy Agency has pointed out that we need to carry out evacuation and we need to provide adequate shelter to the people, and the people should actually intake potassium iodine, okay, which would prevent our thyroid glands from absorbing the radioactive material. And why this is a concern? Because according to IAEA, if Israel attacks this nuclear power plant which is situated in Iran, this would be negatively impacting the Gulf Arabian monarchies, okay, which are a major supplier of crude oil to the globe. Okay, so this could create implications from the perspective of energy security. When you talk about this particular nuclear power plant, this was constructed, its construction began in 1970s, and in this backdrop the IAEA has provided the guarantee that we would make sure through regular inspections that Iran actually do not make use of this civil nuclear power plant to develop nuclear weapons. Now, in this respect, let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to this particular organization. So, it is an autonomous organization within the UN system, and it was established in 1957 as the World's Atoms for Peace organization within the UN. So, what is the basic purpose of this particular organization? Is to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy, okay, and preventing its use for military purpose or for the development of nuclear weapons. It is governed by its own founding treaty, that is Statute of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and it basically reports to both UN General Assembly as well as United Nations Security Council. Its headquarters are based in Vienna, Austria, and in 2005 this organization was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize for the work it has done to create a safe and peaceful world. Currently it has 180 members based on IAEA website as of 15th November 2024, and when you talk about India, India has been one of the founding members of this particular organization, and its functions are basically to make sure that the nuclear energy is used for peaceful purposes only. It is not used for creation of nuclear weapons. And how does this ensure it? By doing monetary on-site inspection and information analysis, and that is the reason this organization has given this guarantee that we would make sure through regular on-site inspection that the Iran do not make use of this civil nuclear power plant to develop nuclear weapons. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this is the last topic of today's Analyst. This is related to Axiom-4 mission. Again, the launching of Axiom-4 mission has been delayed. This particular topic is related to science. Now, again, the deadline for launching the Axiom-4 mission has been put on delayed. Okay, because some work is going on when it comes to International Space Station. So NASA wants to make sure that the International Space Station is ready to have more number of astronauts on it. Okay, previously also the date were delayed due to one or the other reason. Now with this respect, we need to know certain prelim pointers with regard to this particular mission. So when it comes to this Axiom-4 mission, it is going to be a short duration mission which would be lasting for merely 14 days. And what is the long-term vision? Why the different countries are collaborating when it comes to Axiom-4 mission? It is to build world's first commercial space station, transition from International Space Station to their own independent orbital outpost. It is being operated by private US company Axiom Space in partnership with NASA and SpaceX. And when it comes to the astronauts, we have from India Shubhanshu Shukla, we have 3 other astronauts, each from US, Poland and Hungary. When it comes to the astronauts, they would be traveling in a new Dragon spacecraft, which has been built again by SpaceX only. And it would be launched by Falcon rocket, which is again built by SpaceX only. What is the objective of this mission? So, it is to promote space tourism, especially in the low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbits are those orbits which are quite close to the Earth. So, they have an altitude of less than 2000 km if you go by the website of NASA. Then it is promoting international collaboration. NASA, ISRO, they are coming together for effectively launching this Axiom-4 mission, and it has a diverse crew members also from US, from Poland, from Hungary, okay, as we have discussed here. So it is promoting international collaboration in the domain of space. It would give a boost to research and development also, because during this Axiom-4 mission, we would be able to carry out unique microgravity related test on the body, okay, that how the human body respond in case of microgravity environment. And this particular experience would be useful for India's Gaganyaan mission, okay. This would be helpful. Whatever experience we will be gaining, especially Shubhanshu Shukla, whatever experience he would be gaining with respect to this microgravity environment, how our human body responds to that, this would be very helpful for us to effectively launch the human space flight mission, that is the Gaganyaan mission. That's all that we need to know when it comes to today's Analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a very nice day, all of you.